Enoch, the seventh from Adam, a man whose footsteps echoed through eternity, whose words shaped the understanding of angels, judgment, and cosmic warfare for centuries. The Book of Enoch wasn't just read by ancient Jews and Christians, it was treasured, copied, quoted, and revered. Jude himself, writing under divine inspiration, directly quotes from it in the New Testament. Yet today, you'll struggle to find it in any church library. Picture this: a man walked so closely with God that heaven itself took him alive. No death, no grave, just pure divine translation. Yet the book bearing his name sits in shadows while the church speaks in whispers. Tonight, we're breaking that silence. If this resonates with you, hit that like button now, because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about biblical canon. Why? What happened to this celestial roadmap that once guided the faithful through mysteries of heaven and earth? The answer isn't just theological, it's political, institutional, and frankly, uncomfortable for modern Christianity. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to dig deeper into these hidden truths, because we're just getting started. When the 4th century rolled around, church councils gathered to decide what books belonged in the biblical canon. These weren't just spiritual decisions, they were power moves. The Book of Enoch, with its detailed descriptions of angelic hierarchies, interdimensional portals, and divine judgments, didn't fit the neat theological boxes that institutional Christianity was building. Think about it. Enoch describes the Watchers, angels who descended from heaven, took human wives, and produced the Nephilim giants. He details 7 heavens, cosmic warfare, and end times prophecies with stunning precision. This wasn't the sanitized spirituality that church leaders wanted to promote. It was raw, mystical, and dangerous. The political reality. Accepting Enoch meant accepting a more complex spiritual cosmology. It meant acknowledging that the spirit realm operates in ways that challenge traditional denominational control. Church fathers like Jerome and Augustine found it easier to label these texts as apocryphal, not because they lacked authenticity, but because they threatened institutional authority. Here's what they didn't tell you. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church never removed Enoch from their canon. For over 2,000 years, they've preserved and revered this text. The Dead Sea Scrolls discoveries at Qumran included multiple copies of Enochian literature, proving its importance to 1st century Judaism. Early church fathers like Tertullian and Origen referenced it regularly. The councils didn't reject Enoch because it was false. They rejected it because it was inconvenient. Drop a comment below if you're starting to see the pattern here, because the deeper we go, the more shocking this becomes. Let's talk about what Enoch actually reveals. He describes traveling through the heavens, witnessing the throne room of God, and receiving revelations about the final judgment. His visions of fallen angels teaching forbidden knowledge to humanity, metallurgy, warfare, cosmetics, astrology, paint a picture of spiritual corruption that echoes through every age. But here's the kicker. Enoch's prophecies align perfectly with Revelation, Daniel, and Jesus' own words about the end times. He speaks of the Son of Man, the righteous judgment, and the restoration of creation with remarkable consistency. The New Testament authors clearly knew and used Enochian concepts. Matthew describes angels taking wives and producing giants. Paul refers to fallen angels in chains of darkness. Peter mentions spirits in prison. Jude quotes Enoch directly when prophesying about divine judgment. These weren't coincidences. They were drawing from a rich tradition that included Enochian literature. The question becomes, if the apostles found Enoch valuable enough to quote and reference, why don't we? The answer reveals something uncomfortable about how much of our spiritual understanding has been filtered through institutional preferences rather than divine revelation. Modern Christianity often struggles with the supernatural elements that early believers took for granted. We've domesticated the divine, turning cosmic warfare into metaphor and angelic visitations into allegory. Enoch refuses to be domesticated. His visions are literal, his warnings urgent, and his revelations transformative. Consider this. We live in an age where people desperately seek spiritual experiences, mystical encounters, and supernatural understanding. They're turning to New Age practices, occult teachings, and Eastern religions, because the church has stripped away the very elements that once made Christianity the most spiritually dynamic faith on earth. Enoch offers something different. He provides a biblical framework for understanding the supernatural that's both orthodox and extraordinary. His descriptions of angelic hierarchies give context to spiritual warfare. His visions of judgment provide urgency to evangelism. His revelations about cosmic restoration offer hope beyond the grave. If you're finding this eye-opening, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because we're about to explore the most controversial aspect of this entire discussion. The Book of Enoch doesn't just describe past events, it prophesies future ones with startling accuracy. He speaks of a time when knowledge will increase, when wickedness will multiply, and when the boundaries between heaven and earth will blur. Sound familiar? His descriptions of the end times include details that make Revelation seem almost understated. He speaks of cosmic upheaval, dimensional shifts, and divine interventions that reshape reality itself. These aren't metaphorical descriptions, they're literal prophecies about the culmination of human history. But here's what the institutional church fears most. Enoch empowers individual believers to understand spiritual realities without denominational interpretation. His visions are direct, his revelations clear, and his instructions practical. He teaches believers to walk with God at levels that transcend religious tradition. This threatens the very foundation of ecclesiastical authority. If believers can access divine revelation directly, if they can understand cosmic realities without pastoral interpretation, then the institutional gatekeeping that has defined Christianity for centuries becomes irrelevant. The Ethiopian Orthodox Christians never lost this understanding. Their spiritual practices, liturgical traditions, and theological frameworks include elements that would seem foreign to Western Christianity, but perfectly natural to first-century believers. They never allowed political councils to diminish their spiritual inheritance. Think about the implications. What other divine revelations have been filtered out of mainstream Christianity for political convenience? What supernatural realities have been relegated to metaphor because they challenged institutional control? What spiritual practices have been abandoned because they empowered believers beyond denominational boundaries? Enoch walked with God so intimately that death couldn't touch him. His book reveals that same intimacy is available to every believer willing to embrace the fullness of divine revelation. The question isn't whether the Book of Enoch belongs in our Bibles, it's whether we belong in the kind of relationship with God that makes such revelations possible. Here's the reality check. The church's silence about Enoch isn't protecting us from error, it's protecting itself from accountability. When believers discover that the councils chose politics over prophecy, tradition over truth, and institutional security over divine revelation, they start asking harder questions about everything else they've been taught. And those questions lead to spiritual awakening that no council can control, no denomination can contain, and no institution can diminish. They lead believers back to the kind of walking with God relationship that Enoch exemplified: direct, intimate, and transformational. The Book of Enoch isn't just about ancient history. It's about present possibility. It's about rediscovering the supernatural dimensions of faith that modern Christianity has abandoned. It's about embracing the cosmic scope of divine revelation that makes our earthly struggles meaningful and our eternal destiny glorious. If this message has challenged your thinking, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. The silence ends when believers stop accepting institutional limitations on divine revelation. Enoch walked with God, and God took him. His book reveals that the same divine intimacy, the same spiritual elevation, and the same eternal perspective is available to every believer bold enough to seek it. The church may have hidden the book, but it couldn't hide the God who inspired it. The question isn't what happened to the Book of Enoch, it's what happened to the kind of faith that produced it. And the answer to that question might just transform your entire relationship with the divine. Comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more content that challenges conventional Christianity with biblical truth.